Hi guys, Goffy here and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to talk about a camera that I've had for a couple weeks that felt really intimidating. I didn't really know what to do with it because all of the things that I do with photography just felt a little bit inadequate. If you've been following me over on Instagram, you'll know that that camera is the Fujifilm GFX100ii. So Fuji sent me the camera for a couple of weeks, so thank you for them to letting me use it. Now during the 2 weeks that I had the camera on hire, I did have an automotive shoot lined up and I was super excited about it, but the weather ended up raining it off. So I found myself sat here with a medium format camera and two amazing lenses with nothing really to shoot. It's a camera that makes you feel like you can't just take it out on a casual walk and do some portraits, lifestyle, travel photography because it's too big. But I decided to scrap them thoughts and just push through it and see if actually a medium format camera could suit my own style of photography without feeling the need to go out and do something different just because I had a different camera. In the past, I actually had the previous model on hire with the intention of making a video, but the camera actually arrived slightly broken and I was very concerned that I was going to get the blame and my 50% security deposit that I did at the time was going to go missing. It was a bit of a stressful weekend in the end. I did take a few images and some of these images, I think it was very clear that this camera was super capable even though I had to send it back early. Now, whilst I was on that trip, I took one image that I find myself coming back to over and over and over again because it blows my mind just how many megapixels 100 megapixels is in practice. This image up on the screen now is one of the favourites that I took a year ago with this camera. And if you actually have a look at this image, the reason I keep coming back to it is I used a tripod at a high shutter speed, so I've maximised them 100 megapixels, and you can actually tell what time I took the picture. Somewhere in this image, there is a clock face and you can read the time. Now, as you zoom in, you still can't see the clock face, but if you keep on going and keep on going, there it is. And you can see that I took this image at 7:20. It blows my mind just how many megapixels 100 megapixels is. It's more capable than I could ever need, and it just feels borderline illegal. It does feel ridiculous. But yeah, for me, I'm not sure I could find a purpose for this, but it does keep me coming back to this image. I've looked at this image so many times now. If you're wondering what 18 megapixel crops look like out of a 100 megapixel image, they look something like this, which is still absolutely ridiculous. When it comes to the build and design of the camera, it feels exceptionally good. It does just feel like a full frame mirrorless camera that's just a little bit bigger. And it's not that much bigger that the camera itself feels like a problem. And I was actually very impressed with how they managed to pack that medium format sensor into a camera that is reasonably small. The camera itself is built like a brick. It feels super solid. It's probably the most solid feeling camera I think I've ever held. It feels very purposeful, and I guess it probably should do with that price tag. I think the problem generally comes when you then look at the lenses. All of the native Fuji lenses tend to be pretty big. Now, as soon as you hit the fast primes and the zoom lenses, these lenses are really chunky. Some of them aren't too long, but the actual kind of circumference of them is really big. And now by the time you take the slightly bigger camera and much bigger lenses and combine them together, I think this is what feels super intimidating. As a package, it's very big. As just a camera body, it actually feels quite competitive, but the two together for me is a chunky camera. And whilst I was walking around Virginia water later in the week, a lot of people were noticing it, and I can't really blame them. It is a massive chunk of black metal. So moving on to the lenses then, I had the 80mm f1.7, and this was the lens that I was super excited to try. It's got a super fast aperture with that medium format sensor. Combine them together, it feels like a match made in heaven, and it was something I was super excited to try. Now 80 megapixels ends up being like a 63mm full frame equivalent, and it did feel a little bit weird. It took me a bit of time to get used to that 63mm focal length, but after I'd got used to it, we ended up taking some really nice pictures in Virginia water. We had kind of good spring flowers and things as well. This tree, I have no idea what it is, was absolutely stunning, and we messed around doing some portraits. And I think this is where this camera really shines. You might not make much use of the 100 megapixels, but that medium format sensor combined with a fast lens produces some images that other cameras just struggle to match. I feel like that resolution and sharpness that this combination offers means nearly every single portrait I had, I found myself dialing down the clarity to try and add some softness back to the skin. I do think that 100 megapixels and sharpness is just a little bit too good for a portrait, and yeah, I found myself touching them up a little bit to make things a bit softer. I did use this lens as well, just walking around, using it as a prime lens. 63mm felt a bit awkward at times, but this was a lens that definitely shone and made me realise why someone might actually choose medium format. I think the only downside with the lens is the fact that it is audible when focusing. It sounds like it's got like a stepping motor in it rather than the linear motor. For photos, doesn't really matter. For video, I do think you would hear it. If you're wondering what the codes mean down at the bottom of my images, that links to my stackable preset collection. As an example, if you take this image, apply a basic adjustment 2, then tone curve 1, you end up with this final image. There's more info down in the description if you want to find out more. The other lens that I had on hire was the 32 to 64mm f4. I chose this lens as well for the hire because I thought I would want the versatility that it offered. Again, it's a pretty big chunky lens because it's a zoom, and f4, I think this was the lens that made me think, I don't really need this. I feel like at f4, you do still get decent background separation because of that bigger sensor, but I do feel like none of the images had that magic that the 80mm was offering, and I can't help but think pretty much all of the images that I did take, I would have taken just as good images on a Leica or a Fuji camera with a fast lens, and it would have been all way smaller, and I'd have probably had a better time using it. So I found myself not really using this zoom lens all that often. One thing I did do with the lens, and it was partly just because I found some humour in it, I thought it was a little bit funny, was I was selling my car during the same week I had the camera, so I took the Auto Trader pictures, the advertisement pictures, using the GFX. It was absolutely overkill, but I saw a little bit of humour in it, and I had a little bit of fun trying it out. And the car did sell almost within days of putting it up, so maybe it was my really good images in the GFX that sold it, not just the competitive price. So this camera is always going to be a bit of a niche camera, and I think for me it is a big shame that that automotive shoot I had planned failed, because that was a very purposeful shoot and I'd have been taking a very purposeful camera. This camera is perfect for the right person, but for most of us, the mere mortals among us, it is just overkill. It is exceptionally good. It's probably the best camera I've ever used, but I don't want one, partly because of the size. I think for me, if I was to venture into the kind of digital medium format, I'd be looking at the GFX100ii, and I'd probably adapt some vintage lenses. There is one other problem that I kind of have with these medium format cameras, is the fact that they're not really that big when it comes to sensor size. They are a bit bigger than full frame, and that seems to be a better description than actually comparing it to 645 film. Up on the screen I put a little comparison. They're medium format-ish to me. I've seen some images taken with these cameras and the Mikoton lens, and I've honestly seen nothing like them anywhere else out of any other digital camera. So it's definitely something to consider if you are the 1% that actually have a requirement for it. If you've enjoyed this video though guys, please do not forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. If you've got any questions, hit me up down in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you.